Hi, welcome to Distinti's World number 19, the UFO question. In this video, I'm going to show you that the United States policy of denying cover-up is a wise but unwarranted policy. I'm going to explain my position on their existence. I'm going to show you that the US government has inadvertently acknowledged their existence. I'm going to show you that why SETI hasn't found anything, or maybe they have. And I'm also going to explain why, if these aliens do exist, why they will not make contact with us. There's a couple of scenarios. There's actually 3 scenarios. Excuse me. So who am I? I'm Robert Distinti. I'm a senior engineer, former professor of engineering, and former artillery officer. So I am trained in tactics and strategy. And I also am an avid military history buff. If you want to know more about me, you can go to my website, www.distinti.com. Now, the reason why I produce these Distinti World videos is I see the world differently than everybody else, and I'm going to show you a different take on the UFO question. My people from my Patreon site understand that I have all these extra things in my brain, and I have to get these things out of my brain before I can continue on with the work of ethereal mechanics, which is what I'm doing. Anyway. So the U.S. denial and cover-up, from a strategic standpoint, okay, if you suspect an alien presence with unknown disposition, you must assume the following. 1, they have vastly superior technological advantage, which could render your present military completely useless, and they have the ability to gather all kinds of intelligence in ways you may not be even aware of. Okay, but why have they not made contact? Are they peaceful, just observing us? In other words, do they have a prime directive like Star Trek? Or is it that we have nothing they want? Or that we're just too troublesome to deal with? Or maybe we are some sort of experiment or farm for them. And I referenced the movie Jupiter Ascending here, if you want to have understanding of what I mean by that. Or maybe they haven't done any contact with us because they're preparing for invasion. Not now, Cat, not now. Cat wants to cuddle right when I start making the video. Really, dude? Come on, get down. Leah. Oh, all right, fine. I'm going to be doing this with a cat on my... So, he's cuddling. I got invaded by a fuzzy monster. Okay, so what would you do? Well, in all the cases that we went over, you would still surreptitiously acquire their technology. Okay, because if they're hostile, you want to be able to reverse engineer their technology to use it back against them or to defeat or develop countermeasures. On the other hand, if they're peaceful, you're still going to want to get their technology so you can go kick the ass out of your neighbors, kick your neighbors in the ass with the new technology, because you know your neighbors, the other countries around the world are going to do the same thing. Okay, if it's option C or D, then the worst thing you can do is demonstrate any posture in your change to them. In other words, you do not want them to know that you're aware of them. And therefore, you will make no public acknowledgement of their existence. As a matter of fact, you would even go through the trouble of covering up any knowledge of your knowledge of their existence. And you would be making preparations. You would not be making overt preparations or doing overt intelligence gathering. You would be doing those covertly. Now you say, why? Why is it so important that we not make them aware of us? Well, because if they are hostile and they believe that you are aware of them and that you're actively collecting intelligence and developing countermeasures and preparing for an invasion, it would prompt them to begin the invasion early to maintain what advantage they have. Use it or lose it. Now, an example of this is the Normandy invasion. Okay, because Eisenhower knew that the Germans were actively collecting intelligence, military intelligence, and they knew an invasion was going to happen, and they were trying to figure out when and where it was going to be. They were actively collecting intelligence, and every day that Eisenhower delayed the invasion increased the probability that the Germans would be able to determine where and when the invasion would have been. So every day, his advantage is diminishing, and the ability for the invasion to come off successfully is diminishing. So but on the other hand, if Eisenhower believed that the German high command did not believe an invasion would take place and they weren't actively, collecting intelligence, well, he could take his time. Okay, and that's it. You cannot let a potential invading force know that you're aware of them. Otherwise, they're going to speed up their plans and you make the invasion before you're ready to deal with it. In any event, your awareness of them will make them more careful, even if they're not hostile. Okay, if your awareness of them will make them more careful, drying up any intelligence gathering. So in other words, let's say they're just monitoring us, and they realize that once they realize we're actively collecting intelligence on them, they're going to be more careful about not having incidents where, their spaceships fall out of the sky at places like Roswell. And they may more actively go to try to recover stuff that was lost. I mean, they are a technological society. I'm sure they're going to have accidents just like we do. And this is why Project Blue Book was a brilliant idea. It was a way to get out there and gather intelligence from people and at the same time covering up and maintaining any denial that we're aware and acknowledge the existence of the aliens. Now, the bottom part of this is from Wikipedia, and the key part down here is there was no evidence indicating that sightings categorized as unidentified were extraterrestrial vehicles. In other words, they never acknowledged anything was an extraterrestrial vehicle, and they just said, oh, well, we can't explain it. It can't possibly be, so they bent out of their way to cover up that but I'm sure they collected all this intelligence and they reverse engineered it, the intelligence, to try to improve our intelligence gathering assets. And I'll explain that came through in a video inadvertently. Now, I did have a UFO sighting back in the early 2000s. I was sitting on my on my driveway in my front yard, and I was facing south. I was talking to a neighbor, and it was in the evening time, and then we had a street light, so yeah, it wasn't in the dark. And from the south, coming at a very high velocity, were two triangular-shaped ships that were traveling in formation like this. If you looked at them completely from the bottom, they'd look like this, because they were traveling toward me at a very, very high rate. Matter of fact, I was talking to my neighbor, and I was watching this from over my neighbor's shoulder, and I pointed, look, look, look. And by the time the neighbor turned around, they were already over on top of us, and then they turned and darted off to the east. My neighbor didn't see it. It was just too quick for him to see. Okay, then there was a time when I was 13, we were playing basketball at a night court, and I just had an urge to look up, and I saw a star. It had the same light as a star, and it was hanging there like a star. But it was oblong. It was like a bar. It was like a cigar shaped. And the minute I looked at it, it just winked out. It just went dark. Almost like its two sides folded in, almost as if it sped away directly away from me, so it got smaller and smaller and winked out. And then when my mother was pregnant with me back in Easton, Connecticut, she was burning trash late at night, and she said that a ship that filled the entire sky came over, and my mother was not a drinker. She didn't do drugs. She was a heavy cigarette smoker, but she didn't drink. She didn't do anything like that. And she's never, as far as I know, she never lied to me about anything. So I don't know. Maybe these are tourists coming back from the future to see where the great Robert Distinti's childhood home was. I don't know. And there's lots of stories my mom said in the Easton Reservoir area in the time when we were kids. A lot of stuff was going on. So to make it short, I'm a believer. Okay. Now, the preparations of the government, I think, are wise. This denial and cover-up is a wise solution if you're not sure what the true disposition of the aliens are. But I'm going to explain to you, but I believe it's really unwarranted. Because unlike the Hollywood movies where we're going to be engaging in combat with advanced weapon systems and, they're basically going to make us look like, frogs, I don't think I don't think anything like that's going to happen. And the reason why, because I don't think we have anything they want. Okay, their technology is to us, their technology relative to us is the same thing as our technology is relative to a grizzly bear. Okay, and they have nothing, we have nothing they want any more than we have anything a grizzly bear, or the grizzly bear has anything we want. And just like we have a government policy which pretty much says leave the grizzly bears alone, I'm sure they have a similar relationship with us. Please leave the retarded war monkeys alone. Because really, if they wanted to eliminate us, they wouldn't be going ship to ship like you see in the movies, coming out with ray guns and killing us person to person. I mean, if they got such advanced technology, they could just develop a virus or a replicating nanobot and just wipe us out. It would be nothing for them to do that. Or even more fun, they could just spread false information to incite anger and suspicion amongst all the warring factions on this planet, and we'd be happy to do the work of annihilation for them. I mean, why bother? Why bother doing it when you can get us to do it ourselves, where we love to do it? We have all these problems on this planet like cancer and world population that we really need to deal with, but all of the paranoid governments on this world are spending money on arms that we really don't need. Who needs any of this stuff? Okay, we don't need this stuff, and governments just bankrupting their nations to build bigger and more arms and when we should be solving the problem of curing cancer, of developing starship travel so we can get ourselves off this planet. But nope. Well, we're just going to light the sacrificial rite, as the song goes. And finally, I'm going to make the argument that it's not in their best interest to make contact with us. If you looked at any of these movies, like this is the Man Who Fell to Earth by David Bowie. This is The Day the Earth Stood Still. This is E.T. This is Starman with Jeff Bridges. In every single movie, upon aliens coming down to make contact with us, the governments want to go out of their way and they end up like either imprisoning them or killing the contactees. No matter how benevolent, the message is our governments are paranoid. Okay, and the governments are going to basically wait and try to gather intelligence because the governments want their toys. They want the technological advantage because they're paranoid that there's somebody that's more technologically advanced than they are. That makes governments uneasy. Okay, so they will go out of their way to reverse engineer anything they can get their hands on, even going up to the point of conking the alien on the head to take their stuff. Because what we are, we're retarded war monkeys. Okay, so it's not in any way, shape, or form within the alien's best interest to make contact with us, any more than it is in our best interest to go make contact with grizzly bears. Grizzly bears are going to do the same thing. They're going to basically kill us. And why has SETI failed to detect the existence of, there should be all this communication going on, right? Or have they? Going back to the same problem, that the alien technology is going to be so far over what we have, just as a modern smartphone is going to be over old 1920, 1930 radio technology. I mean, old AM radio from the 1930s, you know, the AM radio worked in the in the megahertz band, where the modern cell phone, which is also radio technology, but a much, much more advanced form of it, operates in the gigahertz band. So if SETI is looking with our old technology, trying to listen in on alien technology, it'd be like this guy using this guy to try to listen in on cell phone communications. It wouldn't hear a damn thing. How arrogant we are to think that we can point our radio telescopes at the sky and be able to hear tons of alien radio communication when we're using antiquated equipment. Okay, if these aliens are doing intergalactic communications, they're not going to be using radio waves. They're going to take too long. If they probably develop something that travels much faster than light, which is not something that our old primitive radio telescopes are even going to have a hope of picking up. Okay. So if we go back to this example here, okay, this cell phone operates in the microwave region, which is 10 to the 9 hertz, and this old AM radio works into the 10 to the 6 region over here. But let's assume that we could jury rig this guy to listen in on cell phone communications. Well, what would it sound like? Well, in this old communication, we didn't have high-tech computers and computer chips and encrypting chips and all that, or encoding chips rather. And so these old radios, they use simple AM modulation, which is very inefficient as far as sending communication signal over a channel. But a modern cell phone uses modern techniques where there was a guy named Claude Shannon who said that if you optimally encode a communication channel, that communication channel will seem like it's completely random, like a hiss. White noise is completely random. Okay, and let me show you an example. And we can show you an example of the evolution of communication technology. Okay, this is a spectrogram of the communication of when a modem or a fax machine dials up another fax machine. Let me play this for you now. And what it does, it starts out primitive as these two devices, they dialing, they start talking old technology, little tones, and they say, well, they negotiate to even higher and higher communication rates. Now it sounds like a hiss. Okay, and that's a great example of the later communication protocols there. Instead of using a couple of chirps and beeps, which would be kind of like old AM radio, they use the full spectrum, and it sounds like a hiss. So that's interesting. So in other words, if you were to listen into modern electronic communication with an old AM radio, or if you could listen in, it would be in the gigahertz range, and it would sound like random noise. Gee, where have we heard that before? See if I can. No, I want to go to the next page. Okay, so now, here we go. This is cosmic microwave background radiation. Now, physicists say this is an echo of the Big Bang. No, it's not an echo of the Big Bang. There's no reason why electrical energy, electromagnetic energy should be around since the beginning. Unless, of course, physicists believe in perpetual motion machines. Because every wave phenomenon I've ever studied is a system of kinetic energy jumping between kinetic and potential energy back and forth. And this exchange of energy is never 100% efficient. And if you believe light is completely there, the mechanisms that govern light are completely efficient, then you believe in perpetual motion machines. I don't. There's no way any energy left over from the Big Bang should be bouncing around. So, what is this microwave energy that sounds like a hiss? It's all over the night sky. Now, this is not a globe. This represents a map of the night sky, or the sky around the Earth. And these are little hot spots of this energy. Now, what could it be? Well, it sounds a lot like communication. Now, is it alien technology? Well, if I had to make a guess, I believe that all this microwave energy that sounds like hiss, which looks remarkably like cell phone technology or any kind of modern communication technology, is all of the other civilizations out there that have evolved to the same point we have. They're not communicating amongst the stars to each other. It's just their own internal communications that have gotten here. Because if they're communicating star to star, they're not going to be using microwaves. They're going to be using something completely different that our primitive radio telescopes would not be able to see. So, my friends, I think this is the proof, or not proof, but evidence, corroboration of extraterrestrial civilizations. Not necessarily those that are visiting us, okay, just others that are got to the same technological point that we have, at least in the ballpark. Now, if you go online on YouTube and look up the Nimitz encounters, you're going to see gun camera footage of objects that travel faster than anything humans have been able to build. Now, these videos themselves are not proof that the government acknowledges. The government did say that they regret that these were released, but these are not proof that the government has acknowledged. I'll show you that these are the proof. Because if you look in the old days, when you heard about the UFOs that appeared on radar, then the UFOs all of a sudden just vanished. Well, in the old days, the radar couldn't keep up with the UFO. In other words, the radars were built to track known aircraft types at the time. And because UFOs move very, very, very fast, they can move off the radar image before the radar could come back around to detect it. And so to the radar operator, it looked like the UFO disappeared. So if that happens, what do? Well, in your next evolution of radar or whatever sensors, you make them faster and faster and faster to the point where they can track these extremely fast aircraft. And if you notice, there's lots of different videos out there on this Nimitz encounter. They have one where the radar operator was actually able to get it into track on a track, and they were like, hey, we tracked it, and the flare pod or whatever they tracked it with was able to keep up with this very, very fast moving aircraft. That we have developed the technology to track objects that move faster than anything we can produce is the acknowledgement. Whether or not you believe that these are actual images of UFOs or whatever, that the ability there to track something that we can't even produce is an inadvertent acknowledgement that we're developing the technique to be able to track these objects that move faster than anything that we can possibly produce right now. Whether these are the actual images of those or just something somebody fabricated, that may or may not be an acknowledgement. Some people have made the argument that the reasons why the aliens would want to take our world is for resources, like in the David Bowie movie, The Man Who Fell to Earth. He came to Earth to build a starship to bring water back to his parched world. I'm like, really? These aliens must be stupid then. Because why would you want to suck some water into a starship at sea level and then have to fly that water out of the gravity well of Earth to your planet when you can just go find yourself a comet somewhere which is not in the gravity well of the Earth? Matter of fact, you can pick it up at its farthest point from the sun where the sun has the least pull on it, and then put a thruster on it and just thrust it or drag it over to your world. I mean, why come to Earth when you probably in your solar system you have plenty of comets? Or maybe in the next star system over there's going to be a comet. Just go to that comet, even just chip a piece off of it and drag it back to your planet. I mean, why do you have to go into the gravity well of the Earth to get this? In fact, every kind of resource that a spacefaring race could get is more easily mined out of asteroids, comets, and meteors than it is pulling them up out of the gravity well of a planet. So I'm sorry, there is no resource on the Earth that aliens of sufficiently high technology could want that isn't more easily obtained by other means. So it's not resources. In fact, they probably have access to all kinds of forms of energy that just make fabricating resources from asteroids much easier than the nonsense that we go through on this planet. So it's not about resources. So why have they not contacted us? Well, scenario one is like the bear scenario where we're just too retarded for them to bother with. Okay, and then this is a cartoon from Calvin and Hobbes where Calvin says, sometimes I think the surest sign that intelligent life exists elsewhere in the universe that has not tried to contact us. Scenario two, they're benevolent caretakers. Just as they are caretakers of us, just as we take care of the bears preserve. Okay, and scenario three will be part 2 of this video, which we'll have next week, is that they are dying, and they need us to succeed for their survival, and that's why I think it's a viable scenario. Whether it's the right one or not, it's a very interesting one. There are a number of ways to support us. You could go to the Distinti.com website, which is a repository of all the papers that have been published, and it kind of puts all of the videos on YouTube into a nice order. It also gives more information on who I am. It's free. There's nothing to sign up on it. Some of the videos might be for Patreon only, and that'll be on the Patreon site. And the Patreon site is etherealmechanics.com. And we have lots of levels of support. You can be just a supporter, you can be a first-class passenger, a regular passenger, an engineer, or a bridge officer. Each has different levels of support. Like, for example, if you are engineer, you get access to all the source code that's produced for all these animations and the simulations. If you're a first-class passenger, you get access to any executables and any PDFs and spreadsheets that are produced. Regular passengers just have access to the technology videos. There are other videos which are administrative, which are for bridge officers only, and they're more administrative. The supporter just gives a few dollars, up to $2 to $9 a month, to support the effort. And there are notifications only of what the status is, what we're working on, and any public videos that are produced. And there are public posts also that the supporter would be made aware of. The other alternative is the etherealmechanics.info, which is our blog site. This is managed by Sebastian. It's a good balance between the two. If you don't want to, it'll give good indicator when new videos are released on the YouTube and or the Patreon site. And there's people discussing certain things like how to make a gravity detector and all that stuff. Right now, I'm in the process of completing the electrogravity paper, which hopefully should be complete by summer 2020. After I'm done there, it'll be a big load off my plate, and I can get back into more actively taking care of, people's questions and emails, and doing a little bit more on the blog site. So those are the and if you just want to give a one-time donation, you can go to Distinti.com, and there is a PayPal donate button. You can do that as well. Okay, and if you really want to understand what we're going to on the YouTube site, there is the playlist for the channel trailers. There's I think 13 channel trailers which cover everything from what I'm doing to faster than light starships. That quantum entanglement is ridiculous. The particle wave duality is also ridiculous. And a discussion of quantum computers and all that stuff. Basically, a general overview of the things that I talk about, get into. This Distinti's World videos, again, is more for odd things that are unrelated to ethereal mechanics. But this UFO kind of is, because I do believe that faster than light starships are possible, and that's the main gist of my channel, to develop the technology that'll carry us to the stars. Because again, as I said in the T1 video that I introduced the previous slide, if we do not develop faster than light starships, we are pretty much dead. And you can watch the T1 trailer for that. And the T3 trailer also gets into how I came up with the number of what the sustainable capacity of the Earth is. Anyway, thank you very much. And I'll put the links for a lot of the videos in the low bar of this video. Thank you.